Good morning, everybody. Glad to see you here. Several of you already online and waiting for everything to get started. So, welcome. Finally back to Dev Mentor Dave YouTube channel live on the DeepPockets project. It's been a couple of weeks, and so I'm excited to get back into it. I'm hopefully you guys are excited to get back into it. Hopefully you're really excited to get back into it because we are very, very close to writing our first lines of code for this project. Just FYI, it looks to me like my audio's peaking pretty high, so if it's too loud or something, let me know in the comments section. Uh, or in the chat so I can adjust it a little bit, but I'm going to keep going as we are for now. Again, welcome back. Thank you everybody for hanging in there with me, especially last week as I was away and just spending time with family. I'll get to that in just a second, but I just want to thank you for your patience and for just kind of bearing with me. I know when we get used to doing things in a specific time frame, it can be frustrating when that goes away or when it changes or things like that. And so I just appreciate your flexibility. Obviously, this is not my full-time gig, so I've got other responsibilities and things that often jump in the way here. But thanks for jumping on this morning, and thanks for watching this later if you are watching this later. If you're watching today, if you're watching during the live stream, say hello in the chat. If this is your first time, let us know where you're watching from, and be happy to call that out and say hello back to you if I see it. That's important just to make sure I'm able to see anything that you're sending to me specifically in the chat. Make sure you do @DevMentorDave or do like a bunch of question marks at the beginning or something to make it clear so that when I'm glancing through, I can see, that you're trying to get in contact with me. So lots of times there's other chats going on, and I try to somewhat stay up with it, but especially when we're talking about a topic, I don't always keep track of what's going on in the chat. So I just want to make sure that I'm catching it if you're trying to get a hold of me. So make sure you tag me, or make sure you put some question marks in there, and just let me know. That lets me know that I'm I need to see something and respond to it. So if you're watching live, if you wouldn't mind hitting that, or even later, hit the like button. If you're watching live, you probably already are subscribed, but if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button, click the bell icon. That'll let you know the next time I do go live or the next time I upload a video, which has been a little sparse lately, and I'm going to talk about that here in a couple minutes. But just click all the buttons, all the things that YouTube wants you to click, and that that we creators would like for you to click to help us expand our channels and reach more people. And again, just a reminder, obviously this is a side gig. This is not something that I am doing full time. So as we're trying to grow, we're trying to reach 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We are 60% to the 60% to that goal, and just a little less than half a year. So we're a little bit ahead of the curve, which is great, but we'd like to get there even faster if we can. And Mel, I haven't seen his. Yeah, Mel's here. All right, there she is. Mel keeps trying to get me to bake a cake live when we get there, so I'm being worn down. I think that'll probably happen. I just got to figure out when and where. Once we hit 5,000 subscribers. So again, that's not any magic number. It's just a goal that I have for the channel. It doesn't really do anything for me, like money wise or anything like that. So, but if my goal is to reach as many people as possible, help as many junior devs as I can, just provide some insight, provide some help, provide some opportunities for you to learn and grow along the way on your journey. As you're going from probably already starting to learn code to hopefully a successful career. And that's the tagline for the videos, but it's also what I really want to do. That's my goal for this channel, is to make it something that does that. So if you are here for the first time, say hello, let us know where you're watching from, and we're going to dive in here into our project in just a minute. Let me take a look at the chat here and see. Let's see. Welcome back, Ming. Good to see you. And Jonathan from Atlanta. Welcome, Jonathan. Let's see. That's right, Ming. You're from the UK. Awesome. David, poor AT&T. Oh yeah, exactly. I thought you said AT&T at first. I was like, do you have AT&T for your internet? And I forgot I was wearing this shirt. See, this is one of the reasons why I moved the microphone too, so you guys can see all my shirts now. um, if I adjust the camera right, we'll see. So, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, Mel. Good to see you as well. Here's what I want to know. Everybody's deleting messages. What are you guys saying? I don't know. That's we'll find out. All right. Well, it is morning to me on a Saturday morning. I've been getting to bed a little bit earlier, so I actually woke up at a decent time on my own today, but definitely want some coffee. So if you've got some coffee or tea or whatever wakes you up in the morning, or hopefully if you're across the pond or on the other side of the world, you probably don't want any caffeine. Maybe it's just milk. I don't know. Whatever it is. Good morning. San Diego, California. Welcome, Oscar. Good times. Glad to have you. Idrinth, welcome back. 5 p.m. coffee sounds good. All right. That's awesome. I know some people can drink it like I usually can drink coffee late and it doesn't affect me. My wife cannot. She would be up all night if she had coffee after like noon. So some people it just affects them a lot more. And I haven't been a big coffee drinker. In fact, it wasn't until I got an office job that I started drinking coffee more. I don't know if it's because I needed it or I think it's more of a social thing. You know, people would go into the break room and get coffee and things like that. And so I would just join them trying to be social. You know, developers, we can be a little independent and isolated. So you got to take advantage of those social opportunities whenever you can. So, you know, that's important. Let's see. All right, so just a reminder, if you are new, what we're doing on the live stream here on Saturday mornings right now is we are building a project called the DeepPockets project, and it is a community project. Anyone can participate in that. If you'd like to if you'd like to participate in that, check out the DevMentor Dave Discord channel, our Discord server. You can join the Discord server. There are links in there in the DeepPockets channels that will let you sign up to get access to the repository and things like that. Or you can just follow along, do it on your own if you want along the way. We're going to try to run this like it's a real project. So that's what we're doing here on Saturday mornings. The first hour or so is usually going to be talking about the project, usually teaching something or sharing my thoughts about something related to the project or projects in general and how we do project management. And then the second half, usually we go for about 2 hours. The second half is usually kind of open-ended question answers, just hanging out, having a good time, talking through the chat and all that fun stuff. So if you're new here, that's kind of the plan for the day. Usually I take up the first 15 minutes or so talking about stuff that nobody really cares about, but you're all kind enough to let me blab. So that's what you get. You might want to jump in after 15 minutes moving forward if you don't want to hear all this introductory stuff. So, all right. So that's where we're at from the live stream for today. I did want to just take a couple minutes and in our first 15 here and just kind of update you guys on what's going on with me. Personally, obviously, we weren't on the live stream last week. I actually was live streaming last week, just not publicly. It was a private live stream for the graduation ceremony. I found out basically the night before that they needed somebody to live stream. So that was fun, live streaming a whole graduation from my one camera on my phone. But it worked out pretty well. So, you know, hey, I think hopefully it was at least helpful for people who were not able to attend. So last weekend was graduation for my oldest son. I have 4 children, so pray for me. But last week was graduation for my oldest son. He's moving on. Looking at possibly engineering, so not software engineering. I don't think he could sit in front of a computer that long. But so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But that's why we were not live last week. Just lots of things going on with graduation. Obviously, family in town. I thought maybe I would do a live stream on Monday night, but that with family in town, things like that, it just didn't really pan out. I didn't feel like getting away for that. So thank you for hanging out and just waiting for me to get back here this Saturday. That's also why I haven't done a whole lot of videos lately. You'll notice those have been kind of sparse the last few weeks. But not just graduation. There's been some changes in my job. Nothing bad, thankfully, but just I've actually kind of moved up into a different position at my company, and with that has come a lot more responsibility, a lot more time-consuming things, and so I haven't had as much time to even think really much about the Dev Vector Dave stuff, as well as getting videos out and things like that. So hopefully that is starting to fall into place and find its flow, so to speak. So hopefully we'll be able to get a little bit better at getting some of the videos out. I've got lots of ideas, lots of content that I want to get out there. It's just a matter of having the energy and the time to actually get those done. So thank you again for your patience on that. I know a lot of times it's can be a little bit of a waiting period to see if there's anything new that comes out, and sometimes I just post clips from our live stream and you're like, what's with this? So I try not to do that too much. But I think my timestamps are behind too, so I'll try to get those timestamps updated on our live streams as well. All right, so that's just a little bit of update from me. Update on the project. So this week we're going to talk through our final database structure. That's in quotes for a reason. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we're going to talk about our database structure for the project, at least our initial database structure. But next week we are actually going to have the repository up and available, like actual code will be available in the repository. The base project code will be there, and you'll be able to. I'll be giving access to those who've requested that. So I think that's what I meant to say. I don't know if I said that completely, but you can request access via a form that's linked in the Dev Mentor Dave Discord server. So jump in there if you want to be a part of the actual coding on that. So next week we'll actually go through the repository. I'll kind of walk you through where different things are, maybe answer questions as to why we set things up the way that we do. Kind of just walk through that structure and let you begin to pull it down and play around with it if you'd like on your own. And then the week after that, we'll actually have our first ticket out, and we're gonna start with a community ticket. So it's gonna be just one ticket for everybody to work on and make a PR for, and then we'll start getting into actually reviewing PRs and code and all the fun stuff that's part of a project and really working. I did have somebody mention that they were interested in doing designs. I can't remember who that is, but I'll go back and find that and try to get in touch with them. If it's somebody here, let me know. But I'll try to get in touch with them this week so we can start getting just some basic designs up based off of one of those component libraries that we looked at a couple weeks ago. So, all right, let's see if I miss anything. David says I had a kid and started drinking coffee. Well, yeah, there's that too. Hey, Raymond. Let's see. I don't see anything else specifically for me. Uh-oh. Idrin's waiting for somebody who's 40 minutes late. That's pretty late too, isn't it? Like 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock your time, Idrin? I think that's pretty late. That's dedication right there. All right, let's jump into our project of the day. So we're talking about, oh, it's only 5 p.m. Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad. For some reason, I thought you were later. Let's talk about database design. Now, I know several weeks ago, probably a couple months ago, we talked about database schemas. And we're going to kind of do the same thing, but we're really just more walking through what is going to be our base database schema. Now, when I say our final database, I put that in quotes on purpose because the reality, the reality is that is going to change over time. We are going to come up with new ideas. The client typically is going to come up with new ideas. We're going to think of different ways of thinking about the data than we did at the beginning. And so that structure is often going to change as we go throughout the project. But we want to try to think through what are we probably going to need and what's the best structure for that. And so I want to just kind of walk through a couple of things. As you were thinking about database design, I looked at several people's PRs, and I looked at different things that you guys have been talking about in the Dev Mentor Dave Discord channel as well, just around database schema and design and things like that. I know it's been a few weeks since we talked about that. One of the things that I noticed is you guys jump into some pretty complex stuff pretty quickly, and part of that's just being a developer. We tend to try to think about all the different pieces and try to figure out how it's all going to fit together and use our imagination, and that's good. That's something that we should do. But I think the best principle, especially when you're starting out the project and you're building your database, the best principle I can give you, and the one that I try to stick by, is you've probably heard it, the KISS principle, right? The KISS, right? Keep it super simple, or if you want to be mean, keep it simple, stupid, right? So keep it super simple. You want to try to only create the things that you need to create. We are people who like to solve problems. We like to come up with sometimes interesting ways of doing that. And so when we think about our database design, we like to try to create something that's going to be perfect for every scenario and every situation. And what I would encourage you to do is, starting off, just think about the basic usage of the application. Don't try to think about all the fringe issues or items that you might run into, needs that you might have along the way. So you can think about some of them, but try to keep it very simple. Try to keep it focused on just the basic process of your application, and that will really help. Because I think one of the things that I noticed is people were getting frustrated trying to find the right structure for all the different things that they were thinking about. And that's where we can really spend a lot of time, a lot of wasted time, just trying to get all of the different possibilities rather than just building what we need for right now. Now, we do want to think about the future and try not to, build something that's going to need to be completely rewritten in order to accomplish other things in the future. But it's important that we focus on the simplest aspect, that we take our time and spend our time mostly on the basic structure, the basic usage of the application. And so that's what I've tried to do, and we're going to walk through the database design. I do have a schema that I will put up in the what's it called, homework channel, the homework repository, as well as I will put it in the notes in the information for the actual project. So the wiki for the project, I'll be putting that there, and I'll probably put a link to it in the Dev Mentor Dave Discord channel as well. So that's my first and most important piece of advice for based on everything that I saw looking at other people's designs that you guys put up. Keep it as simple as you possibly can. I know we probably try to do that, but it's easy for us to kind of get lost in the weeds as we go. But that would be my first bit of encouragement, is keep it as simple as you can. You can always add complexity to it later. You can always make your database really grow and do lots of things in the future, but do that when you need to. Try to stick with what you need just at the beginning to get the basic functionality done. Another thing that I want to say before we jump into this is, One thing to keep in mind is that a project and even a database structure is never actually done. I used to work with a guy years ago, and he would tell me, you know, he'd had several businesses actually. He was in his 70s when he was working with us, and he told me, he said, you know, I found out that the same amount of work and the same amount of money that you have to spend building a project, you pretty much have to spend the same amount of work and money maintaining that project every year moving forward. And that's just because things change, requirements change, needs change. And so a project really never reaches a done point. And if the project is never really done, then most likely your database structure is almost never really done. And you're always going to be tweaking it and changing it. Maybe you find better ways, better structures to do what you're trying to do. Maybe it's just trying to find more efficient ways to manage the data so you have fewer calls to your database, or you have less stress on your database. So there's lots of things that go into maintaining a product after you've built it that you're probably going to end up changing some of your database design, some of your product as you go. So it's never really done. So even though, you know, again, we're saying this is our final database, we're going to add stuff to it. We might even have to change stuff along the way. I may or may not have planned that in on purpose just to make us do that. But we're going to run into these things, right? This is part of developing a project and building something for a customer. We're going to run into these different situations where we're going to have to change stuff. So that's why we start with something very simple. We understand that it's not done. There is no actual done in the end. You might finish a project and turn it over to a client, but that doesn't mean the product and the project is really done. It's just, they're just done paying for it. So, and then lastly, I just want to say there is no perfect database design. Everybody has their own ideas of what the best structure is for this type of application or that type of application, or even for this database type. Everyone has their own opinions. Everybody often does things their own way. I think that was pretty obvious even looking at everybody else's database schemas. You all approach it from different directions and different ideas of what is most important, or where kind of more of your focus was when you were developing your database schema. So it's important to understand that that doesn't mean you were wrong and I'm right, or I'm wrong and you're right. The great thing about a database is that you can change it eventually if you need to. It might be a lot of work, but you can change it. You can create a new one and migrate the data over if you need to do something like that. But it is really often opinionated. There are some standards. There are some things that generally most people do just out of habit or just because everybody's pretty much been doing it. But I just want to remind you, there is no perfect database design. So don't feel like if mine is completely different from yours that you have failed in any way. That's not necessarily true. There might be some things that you can learn from it, but that doesn't mean that mine's perfect and yours is terrible. All right. So I just wanted to cover some of those things. Keep it simple. Realize it's never done, and there is no perfect design. So it's all learning. It's all growing as we dig into this. So let's talk about our final draft, quote unquote. Let's see. I'm going to switch gears here so you can see my screen. There we go. Okay. So, so this will be our final database. There we go. There we go. Okay. So, I've already written these out, so I'm just going to be retyping what I have since I've already thought through this. And like I said, we do have a database schema. Don't look. Okay. So I'll show you that here in a little bit, and I'll link that to other places as well so you guys can see that. Let's see, before we jump in here. Don't complicate the cornflakes. Dave, will we be making our own forks so we can compare code? So I'm not a huge fan of forking, to be honest with you. There are there are instances where it's helpful, especially if it's if you've got something that's public that literally thousands of people could be, working on. I've decided to go on this one to go with a collaborator route. So you should be, if you want to have access to submit code to have people look at it, you certainly can fork it. That's not a problem. But as far as people participating in the actual project itself, you should be as a collaborator on the project. If you're not, there's a link to sign up, and I haven't looked at that in a couple days, so I'll take a look at that, just make sure I haven't missed anybody. But I'll get you added as a collaborator to the project, and then you'll just branch off of that. I put a video up a few weeks ago about branching for the project, so that should walk you through. I apologize. It is in the command line, so if you're not a command line person, learn it. So I work with people who use the UI Git stuff, and I'm just not a fan. But that's okay. It's not bad. It's just a personal opinion. I prefer to use the command line. So, but watch that video and you can see we will branch. So you'll create a branch, usually based off of your ticket number. And we'll talk about that when we actually talk about code. We'll talk about how we want to do the branching structure. But you'll branch off, and then you'll commit to that branch, push to that branch, and then you'll create a pull request from your branch into the project. So we won't be doing PRs from forks. We'll do the PRs from our branch, since we don't have tons of people that are going to be working on the project that have requested access. We've only got like 12 or so, I think, if I remember correctly. So it won't be too many people to manage to where we need to look at that stuff. And usually I think most people are okay with us doing a PR, but if you, for some reason you sign up and you want to push code, but you don't want your PR reviewed live, let me know, so I make sure not to do that. Because I don't want to embarrass anybody unnecessarily unless they're good with it. No, hopefully I would do it very kindly. Hopefully. Yeah, Raymond, it's totally up to you. So he says if we need extra hands, he can volunteer. It's completely up to you all if you want to volunteer, if you want to be a part of that. Again, this is a community project that we're building more for learning and more for practice, and just kind of getting used to what it's like to be on a dev team, to work on a project with other people. So it's less about building the project and having something that we're going to put out to the world, because right now the plan is not to do that. We're not really building this to sell or anything like that. So it's really up to you. If you want to participate that and get some of that opportunity, then you're absolutely free to join in. But it's not really a need based thing. So because we don't have like a specific end date or goal or something like that. So, but certainly feel free to let me know if you want to be a part of that. Sign up. It's a Google form link. So sign up on the Google form and we'll get you added. So let's see. Out of the 12, there's at least one who also offered. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Indrinth. Offered for what? Are you talking about the design stuff? That might be what you're talking about. Yeah, I know somebody offered. I'll get in touch with them this week, hopefully, on the designs. Okay, so our final database schema. So as I'm thinking about this, I'm gonna build these tables structures with you right now, kind of the way that I thought through them. And then there is one table that I actually saw in one or two designs from you guys that I hadn't thought about. And we'll look at that one at the end. And quite frankly, I don't know why I didn't think about it, but this is one of the benefits of having a team is you get other people's perspectives and it makes you rethink some of the things that you're doing. So there you go. So you guys have already influenced me and taught me along the way. So it's we're all on a journey and a learning process, so we can all help each other out. All right. So the first one The first table is budgets. This is probably the most obvious. And again, I'm thinking less about what is the most important, or what are the important tables that I'm thinking of. I'm thinking more in terms of what is everything going to kind of revolve around. And to me, it starts with budgets. It starts with, and really a budget is more of like a shell, right? It kind of wraps other things, specifically like line items. And so I'll try to explain what I'm thinking as I'm building this out for you. So budgets have an ID, which is just going to probably be auto increment. I grew up using auto increment. I don't use GUIDs that much. Is it GUID? Yeah. So that's probably something that I should change. I think that's a little bit more modern. But I tend to use the auto increments, especially with MySQL, which is what we're using. So budgets will have an ID. They'll have a name. So I'll want to be able to create a name for the budget, such as family budget, or even put the year in it, like 2024 family budget or something like that. And maybe I want to create a budget. Maybe I want to use the software to manage my business budgets as well as my family budgets, right? So I might have multiple budgets that I want to track at the same time. Or maybe for some reason my wife and I have two separate budgets. We don't. That's weird. So, but there might be instances where you would need multiple budgets, and so I want to be able to name them. Obviously, we're going to want to be able to duplicate them in the future so that we can have a separate budget for each month. And so that's why in the next couple of columns here are year and month, right? So this budget is specifically for 2024 and specifically for, let's say, June, right? Because June is when we're coming up on. So I want to make sure that the budget is more of kind of a wrapper. It's just kind of things are going to fit into this budget. They're going to be connected to this budget, and this budget is for a month. Now, you could, let's say you wanted to do a budget that was less than a month, or maybe more than a month. Maybe you do your budgeting quarterly. This application wouldn't work for you because we're building it for me. So no, that would be something, again, if you're building this for yourself, maybe you would change this. Maybe you would do quarter, and your quarter would be like an enum, and it'd be first, second, third, fourth, or something like that. Maybe it would have a start month. But for ours, again, we're trying to build something pretty basic and pretty simple. Again, keep it simple, right? Keep it super simple. So this is really all I have for the budget, because again, a budget to me is more of a wrapper for other things, but it needs to be something that's duplicated, that can be duplicated, and that can be created on its own too for a different purpose as well. So the first thing that I came up with was a budget. Why not set a start and end date? You absolutely could do that, Idrinth. Again, for me, I tend to think more in months, although it might make sense, especially so I get paid weekly. So monthly isn't necessarily the most perfect way of managing a budget, but bills are sorry guys, bills are often monthly, right? And so I think that to me dictates the budgeting has to budget around expenses, right? So when is the money going to come in and go out? And while the money might come in weekly, I've got bills and recurring payments that are going to go out on a monthly basis. And so they tend to be grouped. Some of them are weekly, but they tend to be grouped by month for the most part. And so for me, a monthly budget seems to make the most sense. But again, a start and end date isn't a bad idea. It might be something that works better for you. And again, we are kind of building this more for me as the client than we are for building it for everyone in the world. So that's another reason why I wouldn't necessarily use start date and end date, because I don't need it for my specific needs, if that makes sense. So yeah, it would help from a calculation standpoint, sort of. Although there are some good libraries out there that can help you manage start and end dates for based on months, and calculations based on dates. For Laravel, Carbon is kind of the one that you see used the most. Um, so it's I think for me it more comes down to this is how I would typically create my budget based on a month, not necessarily based on a start and end date. Um, but you all are making good points and badgering me, but sometimes clients don't listen. So there. Question: will we need to calculate things like leap years, or is there something that will just give us a specific months and days? So again, just thinking about like a basic usage, a budget doesn't necessarily care about leap year. The only thing I could think of is if you have a bill that's based on days and not based on a specific day of the month. Sometimes those do happen. Like I think some of the streaming services are more based on days, so it could affect that. But to me, that's more adjusting the bill information than it is accounting for that from like a budget length standpoint, if that makes sense. Because again, we'll use libraries to determine what the beginning and the end of the month is, based on the month that we pass into it. So I'm not really worried about finding those dates, getting the beginning and end of the month. That should be pretty straightforward. So I don't know that we really need a start and end date specifically. Let's see. Yeah, the calculation thing again. That's something that can be done with Carbon, um, very easily. So I'm not really worried about that part. Okay, let's jump down to the next one. So again, budgets to me are kind of like a wrapper. They're something that holds other stuff. And as I'm thinking about building out a budget, that the budget information is kind of like a top piece, right? And it holds what I'm calling budget line items. All right, so budget line items. If I could write, that'd be great. Now, a line item can be income, or it could be an expense, right? So these are the things. These are kind of our things that we're going to be budgeting for. We're going to be budgeting for our income. We're going to be budgeting for our expenses. It could be budgeting for savings. In fact, we'll see. I have that listed here as well. So let's see. Just a thought. We could put an API on the back end that queries an LLM. We could let it do all the heavy math lifting. Yeah, we could do that. I don't think we'll have to do tons of math. Again, part of this data structure hopefully will help prevent us from doing tons of math along the way, depending on what kind of graphs we want to add in the future. Um, but anyway, so a line item is stuff that we're going to budget specifically for. All right, not categories. We'll look at categories here in a second, but these are things that we'll budget specifically for, such as a mortgage or a utility bill, such as a water bill or electricity bill. These are the actual things that we're going to designate as budget items. So I call them line items. That's just my terminology. And of course, this will have an ID. We'll need to link this to a budget. And when we duplicate a budget, we will want to duplicate all the budget line items as well and make sure that they get assigned to the new budget ID. And we'll want to, because we'll want to be able to adjust those. So let's say this, especially, for example, from like a water usage standpoint or an electricity usage standpoint, summer, typically I use more electricity than I do in the fall and winter and spring. Pretty much summer is the worst electricity month for me. And part of that's because we're running the air conditioning a lot and that just takes up more power, right? So I may want my budget line item for electricity in the summer to be higher than I have it for the winter, right? Because I know I'm going to need to put more money towards that. So we want those line items to be adjustable per budget, but we want to be able to have the same ones for the most part every budget that we create. So the line items will need to be duplicated along with the budget. So we're going to assign the line items to a very specific budget that is based on the year and the month. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you guys. I just realized it's probably pretty small. Okay. Let's see. So we've got a budget ID. That's the link to our budgets. That tells us which budget it's connected to. When I did that, it changed my other notes here. There we go. Okay. So then we have our type. So our budget type. And this would be, I'm using an enum for this. So this would be one of three things. It would be income or expense, or we could use expenditure, or savings. Those are the three that I felt like made the most sense for a budget line item type. Is money coming in? Is money going out? Or kind of, are we transferring money? Are we moving money into kind of a holding place? So like a debt payment would still be an expense. I thought about using debt payment as an option for a budget line item, but really that's just an expense at the end of the day. We're not necessarily going to track debt, largely because when you make a payment on debt, especially if there's interest, there's calculations and stuff there that I don't want to try to do. So that the company does that already for us. That's trying to get us to pay the debt. So I don't want to try to track that ourselves because I don't want us to be off. This is again, keep it super simple, right? So income, expense, and savings, and then of course we need to have our budgeted amount. Now, something to keep in mind with amounts, and this kind of goes back to what Indra was talking about when it comes to data types. We could use like a decimal data type. I kind of waffle. Like, that's the easy way to do things, a simple way to do things. If this were like a really important application, typically we would not use a decimal. In fact, I don't have it as a decimal in the schema, but we would typically use an integer, and we would increase that by 100. So for like United States, we have 2 cents spaces, right? So we would take the value, we'd increase it, we'd multiply it by 100 and store it as an integer, just because that way, from a calculation standpoint, sometimes there's rounding that gets done. And so we typically prefer to do that as a whole number so that we can make sure that those calculations make sense. Because if you're just a little bit off, it can change what your expectations are when you're looking at totals down the road as you get more and more transactions in. So that's probably the way that we go, but we might just use decimal. We'll see. But that's the way that I'm leaning right now. Yeah, exactly. There's no half pennies anymore. All right. So a budgeted amount would be the amount that we're saying this is how much we want to spend. Now, we might end up spending more than that. Hopefully we'll spend less than that, especially if it's an expense or if it's a bill. Hopefully it's less than we budgeted for. But this is the amount that we're budgeting to be able to, theoretically, decimal is fine. I don't know. I haven't used it enough to be super okay with it, to be honest with you. Anyway, so this is the amount that we want to budget for that line item. Now, as I was building this, the next thing I realized is, hey, we want to group these budget line items in specific groups. And so we need to actually have categories. So I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to create budget categories. All right. So budget categories, they'll have an ID and they'll have a name. And that's pretty much it. You could call this category if you wanted to. Sometimes I do, sometimes I just do name to make things similar all the way down. We'll call it category for now. And then usually I try to keep any keys, any foreign keys, these connections to other tables at the top or at the beginning of my table. So I'm going to add the category ID here. All right. So and that's again personal preference. This is kind of the way that we do things at my job. Generally, try to keep all the IDs at the beginning, unless it makes sense somewhere else in the table, as far as like connected to other pieces of information. But we've got categories. So category might be something like health or automotive. You might have your car insurance and your budget for car insurance and your budget for gas or petrol, wherever you're at, right? In the category for automobile, right? All your utilities and your mortgage or your rent might be under housing category. So that way you'd be able to create categories to be able to kind of see how your budget and how your expenses are working from a category standpoint, not just from an individual line item standpoint. All right. So categories, and this is one of those things, as you're thinking through things, you realize we need to add stuff, right? So this will happen even throughout the project, not just here at the beginning when I was putting it together. All right. The next thing that I thought of that we'll need to track are bills. Now, bills are kind of separate. They're not really necessarily connected to the budget. They're not really connected to line items. They sort of are, but not really. Like, sometimes you might just have a one-off bill. So bills are kind of their own thing, but we need a way to be able to tell the application, hey, we've got an expense that's coming up, right? And so to me, that's where bills come in. And we'll actually have a couple of different things I'll show you later in the schema that I don't have written out here. All right. So maybe you'll catch it as we go. So bills. So in the bills, we'll do an ID, just like we do for everything. We'll have a bill name. So the bill might be utility bill, gas bill. We have, I forget what my Spire. Spire is the name of my gas company. So I would put Spire bill or something like that, right? So I would know where that came from. Actually, before that, I would probably, well, no, we'll do that. Okay, so name, ID, name, amount. So this would be what I would expect, and in fact, we'll change this here in a little bit. So this is the amount of the bill. And then frequency. So this is going to be how often should I expect to see this bill coming up. So maybe this is an annual, a quarter, a month, or a week, or maybe it's just a one-off bill. Like we just got a bill for, somebody doing some work on our house, right? I need to get my water heater replaced. So somebody sends me a bill for that. Usually they just take it right away, but somebody sends me a bill for the water heater. Let's see. Hang on a second. I don't have that. What? Okay. All right. Sorry. So maybe it's just a one-off. So we'll do annual, quarter, month, week, and once. All right. So that's kind of our enums for our frequency. Daily. I don't know if what kind of bill do you have that's a daily bill? That's scary. Oh, it's skipping? Sorry guys, let me take a look here. Huh. It's not telling me anything. That's weird. Sorry guys, I don't know what's happening and it's not giving me any feedback on my end. Sorry about that. I'm going to keep going though. Let me know Let me know if it gets worse. But it doesn't seem like it's not complaining to me yet. So sorry about that. It's likely the weather. Oh my. Let's see. Bill for food. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I hmm. Like from the same company? You have a bill for food from the same company every day? Not the UK weather. Oh, now it is. Here we go. Mm-hmm. The bit rate is lower than the recommended bit rate. Well, let's see. I don't think that's anything I can change. Not while we're live. Let me do this. Let me try. I'm going to close a few things and see if that helps. Sometimes having too many programs open messes up the encoding. So let me see. Quit. Don't quit that. Let's see here. All right, we'll see if that gets any better. It really dropped quite a bit. I don't know why. Let me see. Oh, now it's back up. Okay, hopefully it should be better now. I don't know, it's jumping all over the place. Sorry, guys. All right, let me get back to this, though, and hopefully it'll at least record somewhat decently. I don't know. It's dropping. Man. We don't usually have this on a Saturday morning. Let me do this. Give me 1 second. Oh, go away. I'm going to just make sure all my children are off the internet real fast. Okay. Let's get back to this here. Okay. Let's see. It seems like it's doing a little bit better now, so hopefully it'll stay up. All right. Sorry, guys. Hopefully that fixes it and we're good moving forward. I do see it on my end, or it did for a minute there, but it looks like it's back healthy. All right. So frequency of bills. Yeah, I don't have anything that I would mark as daily. That seems like overkill to me to need to have a daily bill. Maybe I'm wrong though. Maybe there's stuff. I mean, at least in my life, there isn't anything that would be a daily bill. So there you go. And again, I'm the client. I'm the client, guys. Remember, it's my product. Sometimes you deal with that. I'm just being perfectly honest with you. All right. Let's see. Let me get back here. So now this one, I do want to add a start and end date. Because I may want to add a bill. Like if I know I'm going to have bills coming in, for example, you know, my son had braces at one point, and we knew that we were going to have a bill for that. Or like a college bill, right? So he's taking classes for college. I know that that's going to start. I may want to add the bill into the system, but not have it start calculating or start influencing anything, or start notifying me of the bill until a certain date. Or I may know that it's only going to go for a certain period of time, and so I want to have an end date so I don't get notifications about it later on past that date. So I do want to have a start date and an end date for the bill as well. CW says, always being the dev is tiring. Dave now gets to be the client. Yep, I get to give everybody a hard time now. I get to be the person with the hammer. uh, although I will be honest with you, with some of the changes at work, I haven't done as much coding lately, and I was able to do some coding this last week for one of our projects, and I was reminded how much I actually like coding. I don't know if you saw that post that I put on the community page in the YouTube, but I do really like it actually still after all these years. Okay, so that's bills. The next thing I thought about was accounts, and I know a lot of you guys spent time working on accounts and trying to tie accounts into the system and attach accounts to other things. Um, I'm not really seeing accounts as being this massively integral part. Um, Again, because we're not going to necessarily be tracking. We will do some things with accounts just for practice sake, but in my budget app, I don't necessarily expect it to be updating any accounts necessarily. It's more for accounts to me are more for knowing where income's going to go, what account maybe I'm going to use to pay specific bills, things like that. So, and we'll get into that more as we start talking about how we're actually developing, as I start writing tickets. So I don't want to go too deep into the weeds on accounts, but I think that was one thing I noticed. A lot of you guys were really trying to figure out how the account management fit into this, and I don't think we really want to go there for the app. We're not really seeking to do a lot of account management. We will do some balances. Normally in an app like this, you'd want to pull the balance from like your bank account and not actually try to track it here. But we'll do some accounts just more for practice than anything, just so we can kind of see how things are going, especially when it comes to like savings accounts. That's something that I would want to track in the app more than like my checking account. But we're going to set it up just to mess around with. So accounts to me are very simple. It's just an ID to be able to interact with other tables and an account name. So I'll just do name again, or I'll do account name. I don't usually like to use the name of the object, because especially in code, typically you're going to use a variable that is the object name. So you'd be using like account. So for example, you do something like account name, right? So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have it be account name. It's just kind of, it's not wrong. It just doesn't make as much sense because you already know you're dealing with an account and you have a name. So I wrote it down with account name before, but I think I'm just going to change it. Here, we're going to just go to name. Boop, 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 boop. And that's why up here, like categories, typically you would just write category name, right? So I'm going to change this to name as well. Instead of category. It just doesn't make as much sense. Okay, so accounts really are just a name, right? But we will track, for some of them, we will do some limited balance tracking. And one of the reasons why I would do some of this balance tracking is because as we make transactions into this application, we can update the balances at that time rather than running a big query every time we want to figure out what the balance is. So, and again, this is not a perfect system because really we should be getting the balances from an external source, from our actual bank, but we're just going to do this for practice sake. Balances. All right. And balances, we're going to have an ID again. Oops. And get my notes here. We will have an account ID, so it's going to be linked to a specific account. And we'll have another ID here in a second, but I'll talk about that in a minute. And then we'll have the actual balance. All right. And now we need to know when this balance was updated. So we'll have an as of field that'll be the date. So that way we can sort when we're getting this. We can do it as of a specific date, so we could look it up. If we wanted to do it as of, the closest to a specific date, obviously we can pull it by the ID if we want the most recent one, but as of gives us a little bit more flexibility from a reporting standpoint, to have a date in there for when this balance was updated for this specific account. Again, this is a very simple account balance process, and part of that's so that we don't spend a bunch of time on accounting stuff and spend more of it on building a budget app. And I think that's where some of you kind of got a lot off in the weeds with some of your designs. But we have one more thing that I have no idea why, but I didn't even think about it. Mostly because I don't add these in individually. I just kind of update the systems that I'm currently using. I'm just updating things. And so I didn't think in terms of how we would actually do that inside the app itself. And several of you actually use this structure in yours, and it was just like, boom, light bulb, duh, why didn't I think of that? So kudos to you all who thought of this in some of your database schemas. So the first one, or not the first one, but the table that is really, really important that I didn't even think about is transactions. All right. So we're going to need some way to put transactions into this system. And I am an idiot and didn't think about that. So there you go. All right. So obviously we'll want some sort of ID for the transaction. But as I was thinking about transactions, there's multiple ways that a transaction, multiple things that a transaction can or should be connected to. And so, because we might want to do reporting on certain things, right? So I'm going to give you several things that we'll connect this to, but they won't all necessarily be required. And that's important. Sometimes we make references, we make connections from one table to another, but it's not always a required connection. Most of these connections that we've had, most of these relationships that we've built are required. Like a balance has to be connected to an account, right? Let's see, a budget line item has to be connected to a budget. Otherwise, it's useless to us, right? So we do have to, a category ID obviously has to be connected to a category, and it needs to have this. So some of these are required relationships, but not every relationship is necessarily going to be required, but we need to account for the possibility sometimes. So we've got an ID. We're going to have a budget line ID or line item ID, because that's what we have, budget line item. Yeah, budget line item ID. So this will be a foreign key to a line item. So we know, hey, this transaction should be applied to this specific line item. Now, it may be applied to that line item just because it's a transaction that isn't connected to anything else. Or it might be connected to that line item because it's connected to a specific bill. All right. So we want to connect the transaction to a bill if we're paying on a bill, especially if we're not paying the full amount and we might need to have more transactions. We don't want to just update a bill amount balance. We want to have a transaction to be able to see, hey, I've paid X amount towards this bill, but there's still that much left. So having transactions gives us that flexibility to be able to assign it to a budget line item for one-off things, transactions that don't have a bill, or to assign it to a specific bill, either in whole or in part. Welcome, Ian. Good to see you. Let's see. So we've got the bill ID. The next thing is, in the case of a transaction or a transfer, I would want to, or just for seeing, what account we took money out of, I would want to see the from account ID and the to account ID. So again, for like savings, I'd want to know where I moved money from and to. So that might be, but the to account, if it's not a transfer, the to account may not be used. So these would be somewhat optional as well. So not every interaction, not every transaction is going to necessarily use all four of these foreign connections, foreign relationships. All right. And then we need a name for the transaction. This would oftentimes be coming from like your credit card statement or coming from your bank account. You know, sometimes they're kind of weird names and you have to decipher what they are. But we want some sort of name so that we can recognize what this transaction was. So if I went out into Wendy's and ate, I want to be able to see that. I want to be able to put that transaction in as Wendy's, right? And maybe that would be. Ooh, I didn't think about this. No, I'd put it under a line item, and that would be connected to the category. I was just thinking maybe we should connect categories, but the line items are already connected to categories, so we're good there. So if I went to Wendy's, I would connect it to the budget line item for food or for eating out, and that would roll up into maybe another category such as food or something like that. So anyway, so name, description. Sometimes you might have a name that doesn't make sense and you need to add a description for it. Theoretically, if we're putting these in manually, which right now we would be, this may not be that big of a deal, or we just want a simple name and a description to explain what this is. You know, why do we have 3 payments to my insurance company, for example? I get 2 separate bills from my car insurance company, one for one car, one for the other. Well, they look the same when they come into the system. So I could manually put them in as separate names, or I might just put in the billing, you know, who it's being sent to. So maybe the name is the company. So I have my insurance company, but the description tells me this one is for this transaction is for this car, this transaction is for this car, right? So you might have multiple reasons, multiple things to describe about transactions that look very similar. So we'll have a name, we'll have a description, and then we'll have a type. Now, a transaction type is going to be a credit or a debit or a transfer, in my opinion. That makes the most sense to me. So either we're adding money or we're removing money, or we're transferring money from one place to another within the system. So, and we want to track those transfers as transactions as well. So those are the 3 types that I felt like made the most sense from a type of transaction standpoint: credit, debit, or transfer. Then, of course, we obviously need to know the amount, not the account, the amount of the transaction, so we know how much to credit or debit or transfer. And then, of course, as with most of these things, we will have created date time, so we can see when that transaction actually took place, or at least when it was put into the system, right? So this was, again, I don't know why I didn't think about this when I was doing my original thoughts on budgeting app and things like that, but for whatever reason I didn't think about it. But many of you guys did think about this, so kudos to you. Good job. Give yourselves a pat on the back for being smarter than me when it came to thinking about transactions. But there's one other thing that I thought about as I was building out the database schema view, and that is bills. Bills might change over time, right? Especially for things like utilities, where you're using a certain amount from one month to, but wait, there's more, from one month to another month, right? And so I think the structure that we have here for bills doesn't really account for that. But this structure gives us kind of the basic information that we need for most bills. So what I want to add is another table called monthly bills. And so what this is going to do is this is going to kind of be a subset of bills. It's going to use the basic information. So we'll create a monthly bill based off of the structure of a bill, right? Hopefully that makes sense. It'll make sense more when we create the tickets. But and the reason for this is because the amount is probably going to change. So what we're going to do here in bills is we're going to do the expected amount, right? So we're going to say I would generally expect my electricity bill to be $100 a month, right? More than that in the summer. But so, for example, when I create a new monthly bill for June, it would say, "Hey, here's your name is your electricity bill. Expected amount is $100. It's a monthly bill." And that way, the start and end date can be, you know, beginning of the year, end of the year, right? Or maybe it just, I keep those null if I know it's something that's just always going to happen, and it'll just create it, right? We can talk through how we want to do that. I haven't figured that out exactly yet. Um, oh my, you guys are getting crazy. Raymond says another thought: we could use an OCR to pull the required information from a screenshot of the bill. And this reduces the user input, therefore reduces the possibility of erroneous input. That is true. That's a lot more work, though. A lot more things to integrate. We could probably do that at some point, or you could do that if you wanted to do that on your own personal version of it. We're going to try to do it simply for now. But I love the forward thinking. I love thinking through other ways to make through, especially the idea of making it more efficient, making it less user input. For those of you, Ian says, yeah, because OCR never messes up. That is true. It has to be trained, right? To learn along the way. So yeah, I mean, for those of you who don't understand what OCR is, that's I can't remember what the term stands for. If anybody knows it, shoot it to me. I'm going to look it up. Optical character recognition. That's what it is. Optical character. So it's basically code seeing a group of words and recognizing it for what it is. You do use that a lot when you're dealing with like scraping. That's a very helpful tool. Yes, optical character recognition. Thank you, Ian. I'm ahead of you on the timeline, so I was able to beat you. So yeah, I mean that's definitely like a great idea for building something, especially if you're going to sell that. I mean that could be a huge selling point. Another way of doing that would simply be if the billing company has an API to connect to the API and get access for that user's account, then you have the most perfect option possible is the is pulling it in from the actual company itself. But that's not a bad idea, Ray. Okay, so transactions. Oh, monthly bills. That's what we're doing. So monthly bills. So here we want to have an expected amount for our bills, and then when we create a monthly bill, it's going to make that monthly bill based off the settings of the bill itself. So here we'll have ID, and then I'm going to cheat and look over here because I don't remember. There we go. All right, so we have the bill ID, so we know, hey, where are we getting our settings from? So we're getting it from the bill ID, and then we'll have an amount. And again, this will be the actual bill amount for that month or for that quarter or for that year or for that week. Excuse me, whatever that is. And so this will be the actual amount, the actual cost that we're going to have to pay. And so it may be different from the expected amount that we would have on the bill. And then lastly, I think it's good for us to have a status, right? So a status here would be, I think I had just received and paid. I think that's the only two statuses I had. Yeah, received and paid. All right, so we've received the bill. So maybe we can't even know what this bill is going to be until we get the bill, right? Sometimes we do because it's just the same amount every month. But if it's a variable amount, we may not know until we get it. So now when we create a monthly bill, it'll be in the received status. And then when we pay the bill, we will make it in a paid. Actually, you know what? I just thought of. We should do. What's a good term for a partial payment? We've got received the bill, we've paid the bill, but what if we only pay part of it? Let me know what you think. What's a good status for? Is it just partial payment? Installment? I like that. Any other ideas? Because this is the actual status of the bill itself. Um, and a bill could be an installment though, so like that could be a bill type. Um, partial payment equals debt multiplier. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes that's what you have to do though. Uh, yeah, I think installment's more of a type. I think we'll go with partial. We'll do partial. Um, we might change that over time. I don't know. If anybody comes up with something different, maybe you're watching this later. I don't know why you are after an hour and 15 minutes, but if you're watching this later, and if you have an idea, leave it in the comment section. We'll go with partial for now. Okay, so monthly bills, ID, bill ID, amount, and status. And this allows us to track payments. So that means our transactions then need to not have a bill ID. They need to have a monthly bill ID. All right, because we're actually making the transaction against the monthly bill, not against the kind of the bill type. Sort of. I don't know. I don't know if there's a better word for that. But yeah, okay. So this will be our basic structure. And again, I just wanted to walk through this manually with you guys so we could talk through my thoughts around it, and even get your guys' idea and feedback. Like we have kind of talked about a few different things. Certainly feel free to leave more comments either in the comment section on the video later or in the Dev Mentor Dave Discord server. Leave more comments and ideas if you have them around things that maybe we should tweak, and we'll consider that. Again, this is our final version, meaning this is the one that I created for it that we'll start with. We'll probably change things over time as we go as well, but this will be our starting database schema. And this is where, let me change. Here we go. So this will be kind of the design layout for us. And I need to make one change here, I think. Well, a couple changes. I'm going to change category to name. I don't know. You probably can't see this stuff. There we go. So I'm going to change category to name. I'm going to change budget line items. Did I miss something here? Budget line items. We need a name for our line item. How did I miss that? How did you guys miss that? we need a name for our line item so we know what it is. Okay. There we go. See, not perfect. Budget line item has an ID, budget ID, category ID, and a name. Maybe we added it and moved it. I don't know. Whatever. So we need a name there for our budget line item. That'll be text. Very good. Okay. So name text and then line item types. Those are our enums. Bills have a name. Expected amount, frequency, start date, end date. Bill frequency, quarter, year, quarter, month, week, once. Okay. Monthly bills, bill ID, amount. Did we just have the four things? Monthly bills, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. Okay. And we need to update received, partial, and paid. All right. Then we've got our accounts, name, name for transaction, description, credit, debit, transfer. Okay. So I think everything is updated now based on what we just went over. And again, I'll make sure and give you guys either access to this via link, probably the easiest thing to do. If you want to pull it down, you can do that. But this is just kind of that database structure so you can see visually how everything is linked up. And again, I'll give you a link to this so we don't try to expand this too much and make it crazy. How about if I do that? Maybe that's a little bit easier. There we go. Might be a little bit easier to see. So we've got our budgets, and as you can see, budgets really are just connected to line items. They're kind of their own things. Same thing out here with budget categories. Accounts, again, kind of connect to multiple things, but they're just kind of their own entity. Monthly bills and bills, very much the same. So we actually have really our biggest kind of central piece of information when you look at it from a schema standpoint, when you look at it from a graph standpoint, the main functionality of our application really is around this transactions table that I didn't even think about. So you guys thought of really the main thing when you look at how the database ends up connecting. The main piece of information that we have is transactions, and it's something that I didn't even think about, and you all did. So again, well done on that, thinking through that process and how we would actually input the information into this system over time and actually make it useful for us as a budgeting software. So again, give yourselves a pat on the back. Good job with that. But yeah, so everything, almost everything connects in some way to this transaction table. So this really is going to be kind of the center hub for what we're doing in the future. So, yes. All right, cool. Any questions on what we did from a database schema standpoint? Again, I will get the link to this put in the Dev Mentor Dave Discord channel, as well as over in the wiki for our project once I get all that set up too. So all of this will be available, and we'll update this as we need to make changes. We will update this schema so that we have it, so that it's an accurate representation of what we are building, and it's a reference for when we go in and do probably the first things we'll do, which is building database migrations, because you kind of need the database built in order to be able to add things to it and actually test out your other code. So that'll be one of the first things that we do code-wise, is building migrations to set up our database tables and to and seeders, maybe to seed some of the initial categories and things like that. So looking forward to that for sure. All right, so unless there's a question about what we went over on the database schema, our final database schema for the project, then we'll just kind of open it up. If you guys have any other thoughts or questions or issues or concerns, or usually when I run meetings at work, I usually use C words. I'll do like any concerns. I guess it's not really C words because I use questions, and that's a Q word, but you know what I mean. the sound. I like to think of lots of words, and it's an icebreaker. Anyway, I need some coffee. Yeah, questions with a C. Excellent, Ink. Ian, that's awesome. Oh my. Here's a question, Dev Dave. Will the schema not change when you update it? How will we know if it's been updated? Will we need to keep checking it? If I do update the schema, I will leave a note so that you know what has been updated, so you can see that. I don't know. This probably doesn't. Does this keep track of versions? What's this? History. Oh, I have to upgrade, of course. I might would do that for you guys. I don't know. No, I'll just let you know when I make a change. I'll let you know when I make a change so that you know what changed and why. Typically, it's either going to change due to a discussion that we have, either on the Discord server or maybe on one of our live streams. So there should be some conversation around why it's changing. But I will leave a note about why it's changing and what changed when we do change the database schema. Probably more likely it'll be added to more than it will be changed, but we might find things that need to be changed just to make it work better for what we're trying to do. So, but yeah, I will make sure and let you guys know that, so you have information. It's not just you have to try to keep up with it in some way. I don't know if they Yeah, I doubt you can like subscribe to it and get a notification when it's changed. Hmm. Yeah, I don't think you can. But yeah, oh well. So that'll be the process that we'll use, Mel. Hopefully that makes sense. Raymond likes the size of my cup. It's almost as big as my head. Yeah. So my wife bought this for me. Obviously, my wife bought it, not my children, right? Because it says "best dad ever." Trying to encourage me, even though they may not think it. I don't know. uh, Ian says I use a quart measuring cup for coffee sometimes. Holy cow! That is a big cup of coffee. Honestly, this was a gift, which is why I used it. Why I use it typically. I have it on most live streams. Um, and I this is the one that I typically use the most. I have one other one that I use often too. Uh, but and so I use it because it's a gift. But also I grabbed this one specifically because I made coffee this morning and I didn't get any right away. And when I got back downstairs, it was mostly gone. So I wanted to take as much of it as I could. So this is my selfish coffee cup. So yeah, it's big. Let's see. Ming asks, will we be using an ORM for the seeding like Prisma or Superbase? So we'll be using Laravel as our backend framework for PHP, and Laravel uses an ORM called Eloquent. And so yeah, we will be using Eloquent to do all of our migrations if we needed to roll back to do that, to do database seeding, all that stuff. So yeah, that's what we'll be using. Is the Eloquent ORM from Laravel. Let's see. Perhaps we could document changes to the database schema as well as code all in one place. Yeah, Mel. So when we go to, let me jump over to GitHub here so you can see kind of what we'll be doing. So this will be our repository for the DeepPockets project. It's not completely ready yet. But I've started working on it, and that's the important thing. But we will have, so there's this project here tab, and then DeepPockets project, and this will be where our board is. So the board for tickets and things like that. But there's also where is it at? Oh, sorry, I went the wrong place. Oh, come on. Repositories, DeepPockets, wiki. Sorry, clicked the wrong thing. Wiki. So it'll be in the wiki. Don't look at this yet because I started it and it's not going well yet. But I will have probably a page that has our database schema, and then on the wiki itself I'll have updates. So like if I have an update to the database schema, there'll be a note. Probably the most recent update will be at the top, just so you see it right away. So this will be this wiki page is where you're going to find all the project documentation, and any updates and things like that will be noted in that documentation there. So hopefully that makes sense. Mel, let me know if that doesn't make sense. But yes, it's not technically all in one place, but it's pretty close. You've got the code over here and you got the wiki over here. And then the project board will be under the projects. So, and again, we'll go over that next week some more when we go through the actual repo and kind of talk through where things are, how we've got it set up. Again, there's no perfect setup for repositories either. People do things slightly different, even within the Laravel community. So that way we walk through everything that we've got set up and the way that we're doing it, at least for now. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if not. Let's see. The cup matches my shirt. Yeah, pretty close. It's pretty close. The shirt's a little bit more faded because I like this shirt and I wear it a lot. So, but yeah, it's funny though because I need to find a different place to do my live streams, or maybe just build a better place in the house somewhere to do my live streams and my recordings, because this wall back here is not a great wall, so I have a green screen on it. So this brick is not real brick. Most of you probably know that, but just in case, you can see the green screen in my chair because it's mesh. But so the green screen back there, it's not, that's not really my live wall. And so I'd like to have another place, because my favorite color actually is green. I actually prefer green things, but I wear a lot of blues and reds now because of that guy back there. I can't. Maybe I should change it to like black or something. I don't know. But it's kind of annoying because I can't wear my favorite colored things, or use my favorite colored things because they don't work. Let's see. Web words. Will we also do some query optimization if needed? Sure. I mean, obviously we'll use the ORM, but there may be instances where it just makes more sense to write our own SQL query or MySQL query, because the ORM adds too much overhead. I don't know if we'll really fall into that need necessarily on this project. Again, more because it's not really a commercial project. So having an ORM created query that's not as maybe not as fast as something that we would come up with. There's a trade-off there. I don't want to get too in the weeds necessarily with it, but I wouldn't be opposed to it if somebody had an idea for a better query. Yeah. Yeah, it should be easy to find changes, Mel. So hopefully it is. Yeah, green it's just always been my favorite color, and it's sad that I can't use it. No, well, actually, my house is green. Now that I think about it, it's not my favorite green color. It's more of like a faded, not really pastel green, but kind of more of a mint green type. I don't know. I have to go look at it again, but it's got brick and green in places. So it is kind of green. Maybe that's why I bought this house, because it's green. It had to be, because it wasn't because of the floors. The floors are crazy. Anyway. Yeah, Ming, I've actually had several people, even friends of mine, who have looked at this and they've been like, I really thought that wall was real in the back behind you. So I was like, well, I mean, that's good. At least it looks okay. But you can kind of see like like the green screen. Here, I'll take it. We'll take you behind the scenes, right? Here we go. So behind the scenes, let's see. Boom. Oh, it's black. Nope. I'm trying to figure out how to find this. Well, imagine the black. Imagine the black is green. It's green. But anyway, there's like this. So I've got it taped to the wall, sort of velcroed to the wall, so you can't really see it. But that's weird. Why is it? It's odd that it's showing it as black. Because I would think that it would be... Huh. I don't know. But yeah, it's black, as you can see. Whoa. And sometimes you can tell, like, if I block light, it messes stuff up. See how grainy it is? It's trying to figure out what to do. So that's why it's a little green. If you look at this, there's a little hint of green because the light hanging off of it. Whoa, my eyes are gone. So I have green eyes. Maybe that's the problem. Anyway, yeah, so it's definitely fake. And that's also why. So up here, this wall actually is that... Oh, no, that's brown. Never mind. Other walls in here are kind of a green color. More of that minty green color. Anyway, not that any of you actually cared about any of that. But yeah, it's all fake. It's all an illusion. So, oh man, let's see. Sorry, Ray. I just burst your bubble, and now you're gonna see every time I make a motion, and you see it back there. You see it messing up, So that's why I try to sit up closer when I'm doing things, so I don't mess with the light too much. Because if I mess with the light, it messes up the the view. So the shelves are not real. The shelves are very much real. They're very much real. They need painted, but they're real. uh, the green screen. No, these are real books. Real books. I have actually. I haven't read all of them. I've read most of them. Real books. It's just the wall, guys. It's just the wall behind me because it's ugly. All right. I just moved it. I just moved. Here we go. Right here. See? You want to see that it's real? Here. Real books. Awesome. If anybody jumped on right now, they'd be like, this is the weirdest live stream in the entire world. And they would be right. That's funny. Yeah, I have thought about like coming up with like a cool office picture as a background and just putting a whole green screen all the way across and using like a fake office background, but I'm too lazy for that at the end of the day. It's too much work. Yeah, I'm AI. That's why I make so many mistakes. Because I'm just artificial intelligence. I'm not real intelligence. That's funny. Oh man. Well, again, this is just if you guys have any questions or anything that you're struggling with. I did want to say something earlier that I didn't, because I kind of missed it as I was going through some of my notes at the beginning of the stream. But I was talking to somebody earlier this week, actually, I think it was yesterday, if I remember correctly, and just talking about the reality that everybody comes from different backgrounds, different life experiences, and my life experience may have given me an easier path to get into what I'm doing now, both as a developer and as a YouTuber. And I recognize that, and so that's one of the things that I want to try to be sensitive to with you guys is I understand everybody is coming from a different path, from a different life history, and for some people it's going to be easier to do what we're talking about, and some people it's going to be harder to do what we're talking about. And my advice is often based off of my own opinion, my own experience, and so it may not be perfect for everyone. But I truly believe that anyone can get into this business. It may be harder for some, it may take longer for some, just based on the availability of opportunities. But I truly think that most people who really want to be developers, who can get past the initial stages of learning to write code and being able to spend time on the computer, and lots of you have probably seen some of my videos about some of those things, but I truly believe that there are opportunities out there for you. I know right now it's difficult, especially for junior developers. All junior developers are having a hard time getting jobs, hard time keeping jobs sometimes, just due to the current market. There is no perfect silver bullet to help fix that issue for you guys. I wish there were. I wish there was one thing that I could just tell you, do this and you'll get a job. There's just so many variables in that process. But the best thing that you can do is to continue to learn, continue to grow, continue to put yourself out there, even when you get rejected, when you don't when you don't get feedback. I know that's something that we've talked about. I'm actually working on kind of a rant video towards companies about the lack of feedback that's given. I actually had a post on LinkedIn blow up a couple weeks ago that I posted about that topic and got lots of opinions on it. So I'm going to try to do the same thing with the video. And see what feathers we can ruffle on the YouTube channel. But there's lots of things. There's lots of discouragements, and that's why I put that post up a couple days ago. Is that I know that we could talk about a lot of discouraging things in videos and in live streams, but I want to encourage you that this is still a really good long-term career. It may not start when you want it to. It may not start the way you want it to, but if you can persevere and you can get into this world, it's a great career. And I think that I would say most of you on here, if not all of you on here, have that capability and you just need the opportunities. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do is figure out how can I help? How can we as a community help create those opportunities? Obviously, at the end of the day, everybody wants a paid coding position, right? We want a career. We want to be able to get paid for writing code. And things like the DeepPockets project don't pay. They're just a learning opportunity. But I'm trying to think about opportunities and ways and that we can hopefully in the future work with companies or do something to make this process better for you all as junior developers. There's not going to be a perfect process, and anything that we do isn't going to work for everybody. I know that, but I truly think that just especially those of you that are on here on the live streams pretty frequently, like I've gotten to know you guys. I know that you all can do it, and I think we're going to see that as we build the project together. So I just want to encourage you guys. I know there's lots of different things. Each of you have different things that are disappointments in your journey. But that doesn't mean the journey's bad. It doesn't mean the journey isn't for you. And so I just wanted to give you a word of encouragement and say, keep going. Even if you have to take a break, if you got to do something else for a while, that's fine. But I think that there are opportunities and there will be opportunities in the future. AI is not going to destroy your jobs. The reality is we need junior developers because eventually us old guys are going to stop writing code. Like I don't write a lot of code anymore. And eventually there's going to be more of us not writing code because we're moved up or because we retired and we're just not doing it anymore. And so we're going to need people to fill in those gaps. And so eventually we're going to need to start hiring junior devs again. And that's why I think even with AI, you may have to have a higher skill set. I feel sorry for you guys now because for me coming in as a junior level developer, I didn't have to know nearly as much as you guys have to know these days. And honestly, if I'm just being frank with you guys, I think many of you, I see you guys put stuff into the Discord channel, and I read some of the things that you guys are learning and discussing, and I feel lost. just to be perfectly honest with you, I probably lose some subscribers now because Dev Mentor Dave doesn't know enough. But I mean, there are things that you guys are talking about that I've never had to deal with. I've never had to learn in my career, or I've never been interested in learning it necessarily, or whatever the case may be. And so I'm not going to be the perfect mentor for everybody, but hopefully I can give you some good advice and help you along the way. And hopefully in turn, you do what you've been doing and help each other. So, all right, sorry, long-winded. If you don't know this by now, you should know I can talk. I can talk about almost anything for as long as I need to. So, so if you guys don't have questions, I will fill the time. All right, let me see. Sorry, Raymond. I didn't mean to mess up your viewing experience. uh, yeah, Ming, that's great advice. And um, let me just read the advice that he said from his friend. He says, um, to get more experience, you need to build more projects. When I say project, they're not beginner level, but production level. That really is the key. Um, this is why tutorials don't really help you. They help you learn a framework, or they help you learn a concept, but doing tutorials don't help you grow your experience. Um, Experience comes through struggle. Growth comes through struggle. And so if you're just doing tutorial things, if you're just doing simple applications, if you're not pushing the boundaries of what you know, if you're not pushing the boundaries of um, what you think you can do, what you're experiencing, then you're not really growing. It's kind of like a muscle, right? So as you can tell, I work out a lot. Or never. And I need to, but I don't. But when you are working out, what are you actually doing to build muscle? When you're building muscle, you're actually tearing the muscle down. You're actually harming the muscle. And the body sees that the muscle's been harmed and realizes, hey, whatever we were doing, we need to be stronger. We need to be bigger. We need to be better in order to be able to not fail in the future. And so you tear your muscle down, and then your body rebuilds that muscle and it builds it bigger and it builds it stronger. And the same concept is true when it comes to learning code and getting better at code. You've got to put yourself in situations as a developer that force you outside of your comfort zone, that force you to learn something new, that force you to fail. Um, these are all things that I've got notes for this stuff in future videos, but like failure is not an option. It's a requirement. Okay. Preview of coming attraction. This is an upcoming video. Failure is not an option. It's a requirement. You must fail if you are going to get better. Um, Great developers are not great developers because they've been successful at every turn. They're great developers because they've gone through struggle and hardship and figured out how to do what they're trying to do. And so, yeah, it's not about building beginner level stuff. It's about building professional level applications. And when you do that, you will then have the experience that you can walk into an interview and actually have a conversation about real production level application development and have a greater opportunity to secure a job. Because if I've got a junior that can walk in and talk about production level development better than a senior, there's multiple reasons I'm going to hire the junior. One, they're probably more trainable, right? They're probably cheaper than the senior level developer, but they obviously have more enthusiasm, more than likely, than the senior level, because a lot of us senior level devs are kind of stick in the muds. We like to do things our way. And so there's lots of reasons why if you can walk in and talk about your experience at a production level, application development, that is a huge boon to your hireability. So I fully and wholeheartedly agree with your friend Ming on that topic. So Mel says, I often feel like I have too much time, and yet I feel like I don't have enough, because even if I spend my free time working on it, it still takes so much time to learn, write, and maintain code. Yeah. So I recently had a friend of mine whose child was taking an online course in school for basic, you know, basic website building, super basic HTML, CSS. I don't think it was even JavaScript or anything like that. And they reached out to me and said, "Hey, can you help? Because the person just isn't quite getting it. They're not understanding it. So I was asking some questions. Like it had a list of things you're supposed to do. The documentation was really well written from a course perspective. I don't think there were videos, but it was a written course. It seemed to be pretty good. Um, but the big takeaway that I took from that interaction is they had done all the things that they were required to do, but that's all that they did. And the thing that you have to remember or know about learning code is you learn by doing. I have never met anyone, including my son, who really knew how to write code just by reading or watching tutorials, right? You learn by doing. I mentioned my son because my youngest son, before he was even allowed to use a computer, he's a little weird. He would go to the library and he would get coding books for kids, and he would just read the coding books. He didn't have any way to do them. We didn't let him use the computer when he was that young, and so he would just read the coding books. I don't know if he was just trying to be friends with dad or what, but it was a little odd, a little weird. But when he started, actually learning to code, he didn't remember any of that stuff because there's so much to learn and so much to know and so much to remember. You're really only going to remember the things that you do over and over and over and over again. It kind of just becomes muscle memory. A lot of the code I write is very similar code because it's what I know. It's what I do all the time. If there's something that I don't do very often, like regex or something like that, I got to go look it up. I got to go figure out how to do something. There are things that I know that I've done many times in the past, but I don't do it very often, and so I still have to go look it up. CSS attributes that I need to go look up because I just don't remember what they are because I don't use them very often. So it's all about how often you use it and how frequently you use it, right? It's what you're doing and how often you're doing it. That is what's going to make it stick in your head, and then it's what you're doing. Are you doing production level stuff? Are you trying to build something hard, or are you just trying to do easy things? But the frequency, like you said, I know, Mel, sometimes you feel like you have lots of time, but not enough time. And part of that's just because you're probably finding yourself going over and doing a lot of the same things over and over again. And honestly, that's the job. We write a lot of the same stuff over and over and over again, especially if you're in a job where you build similar things often, whether that's websites or applications. We build a lot of CRMs, and so there's a lot of similar structures to those, and so some of that is boilerplate that we can maybe let AI do. I don't know, we haven't done that, but maybe we can pass some of that stuff off to other things, but we're still going to write a lot of the same types of code, even from one application to another. That's just the way that code works. That's the way computers work. So I wouldn't feel bad about that. Just understand that's part of the learning process, Mel. Let's see. Yeah, Ian says good judgment comes from experience, and experience, well, that comes from bad judgment or poor judgment. That's very true. We often learn by our failures more than we do by our success, right? Uh, let's see. Question down here. I find it's often a battle between me doing the things the course is teaching and all the projects I have running around my head that I want to try out. Yeah, I totally get that. That's a struggle. I mean, there's things even for me that I want to build, things that I know would be helpful to me. Both even just like there's stuff I want to build to help me manage planning and things like that for the YouTube channel. Finding the time to do it is the hard thing, and then when I have the time, finding the motivation in that moment to do it is the struggle. But yeah, I would, my advice there, Mel, would be only use the tutorial to understand the concept. Like I would probably not even do like if they're giving you examples, I probably wouldn't even necessarily do the examples. I would watch the tutorial and then take another project that I'm working on that I want to do and figure out, okay, I understand this concept. How do I put that concept from the tutorial into this project and kind of almost skip a step? Now, some people can't do that. Some people need to just do that and then move on. Do the tutorial, then move on. That's fine. I'm not saying you're a bad developer or less of a developer if you need to do that. That's just how some people learn better. So that's fine. But if you can, watch the video, learn the information, read the documentation, and then try to apply it in your actual application that's maybe more robust, has more things interacting with that code, depending on what it is that you're writing. Because again, those tutorials are very basic, very standalone, isolated in what you're doing. And so you don't necessarily see, hey, if I use this thing that I'm learning in this tutorial, how's that going to affect my app overall? You may not see that going through just the tutorial. So it's putting that information into a real world application and experience that's going to reinforce what you learned, but also help you see maybe some downsides to it, maybe some issues with implementing it, or just maybe see that you don't understand it quite as fully as you need to make it work. So switching to water here because my voice is about gone. Let's see. Yeah, prioritization is difficult. I would say it depends on what your goals are, right? It depends on what you're trying to do. If you're maybe looking to go into freelance, then maybe you spend less time working on your projects and more time working on something for a client. Maybe you work on something as like a proposal to a client to show them what you have that's available, things that you can do. Maybe that sets your priority. If your priority is to try to get a job, then you're going to want to build something that is production level as much as possible. And that may be more of your own project than it would be for like an actual client. And so that you maybe would focus, but you're going to focus on something that's important for that goal. So I would say, what is your goal? Your motivation is based off of your goal, what you're trying to achieve. If you're just learning, then I would say build something that sounds fun. Because if you're building something that sounds fun or enjoyable, you're going to keep coming back to it to do it. If you're doing something, because that's going to be the only motivation, is enjoying the learning process. So it depends on what your goal is as to what your motivation is going to be to keep you moving forward through that process. So that's probably the biggest question that I would ask when you hit those times of prioritization, trying to figure out what's more important. What is your current goal that you're trying to focus on? And then do the project that helps you achieve that goal fastest in the most efficient way. That would be my suggestion. Let's see. Any other questions here? Yeah, that's a good question. A good statement there. Talking about, being able to see down the road what the outcome of your decisions are going to be. There are some things that are kind of obvious and there are some things that are not. Some things are also dependent on other people. You think about getting a job as a developer. There's only so much that you can do to get a job. Some of that relies on the company and their interview process and what they think about you, and you can do everything perfectly and professionally and still not get the job, right? Because there are other factors that you can't control. I think the biggest thing for me is what is right, like from like moral standpoint, obviously, and then not just what is right, but what do I think, or even getting counsel, getting advice from other people, what do you think are the things that are going to help me reach this goal? Because sometimes we don't know what those are. If we haven't had that hit that goal before, if we don't know somebody that's hit that goal before, we may not know what the right steps are to get there. So we may need to get with somebody who has reached that goal, right? It's interesting. There's lots of books that have been written of people interviewing millionaires, right? And asking questions. How did you become a millionaire, right? And then they take all that data and they put together these kind of pathways or commonalities between people who became millionaires. And that can be helpful because it helps you see, okay, these are common things that they did to get to where they are. Same thing's true with development. Talk to developers if you can. Get a hold of them through LinkedIn or other sources who have been where you want to be. And again, the circumstances are going to be different. We talked about that. There are going to be some people will have had a much easier path to get to where they are than you do. And so maybe their advice doesn't work perfectly for you. That's just a reality. But the more people you talk to, the more commonalities you can get of how to get where they are. And I think you're getting a lot of that, a lot of those obvious ones here, even in the chat today. And again, that's why, if you have the opportunity and can find some sort of mentoring, even if it's limited mentoring, I mean, to me, that's where mentoring, the gold mine of mentoring, is in those conversations, not so much in learning the code, but in walking the path to reaching the goals that you're trying to reach. So, oop. Still searching for where I want to be in 10 years. It's possible that I don't want to fit into a niche, but I want to be more rounded on multiple things. Yeah. That's not wrong, Mel. I think there are pros and cons to focusing on a specific niche. Focusing on a specific niche gives you, or niche. I don't know the right way to pronounce that. It gives you a very clear definition of what to do, what to learn. But that doesn't mean that's what you want to do for your entire career. Maybe that's just something that needs to change over time. Maybe you want to focus the next few years on application development, but hey, at some point I'm going to want to switch over to game development. Or maybe that just happens over time, that your goals change, and that's okay. Goals can change, but I think the key is to keep an eye on what your current goals are, even if they're not 10 years. I don't know that you need a 10-year goal, and I say that partially because the average tenure for a developer at a company these days is 2 years or less. And so, to me, making a 10-year goal doesn't necessarily make sense. I would rather make like a 3-year goal and be like, okay, or maybe even a 2-year goal. Just take that time frame that most people, at my first job or my next job, this is the goal. This is where I want to be when I leave to go do something else, or this is where I want to be when, as too often happens, people get laid off, right? So I want to be at this level. This is the goal that I want to have at 2 years. So maybe that's a better objective than the whole 10-year plan. It used to be you could stay at a company for many, many years, doing the same thing, even in development. And that just is not as realistic as it used to be for many reasons. And so maybe instead of a 10-year goal, it's a 2-year goal. This is where I want to be in 2 years. And that gives you flexibility to change your goal every couple of years, every 3 years, and focus on something else to make yourself better. Oftentimes 10-year goals are really high as well. And so when we don't feel like we're on track in the first few years, we could get discouraged. So I'm not necessarily a huge fan of a 10-year goal. I'd probably try more like 2 or 3 years. Maybe that'll help. Feel like you've got more control over what you're doing in the short term. Ming says, I think networking is powerful. One friend that's a React Native dev, I have sessions with him every Wednesday to iron out things I'm messing up in the interview process. And you do paired programming. That's awesome. So, I mean, that's not a friend. That's a mentor. I mean, I'm sure he's a friend too. They're probably a friend as well. But that's what mentoring is. It doesn't have to look like this really formulaic process. It can just be somebody that you get with on a frequent basis, and they help you. They help you see things that you're not seeing. They help you learn things that you haven't learned. Help you find the mistakes. Pair programming is really good. I remember the first time I heard about paired programming, I thought seems like a waste of time. That seems like one person's just doing nothing. But then after mentoring some junior devs, I realized paired programming is really, really powerful, especially if the person, if the junior dev is doing the programming and getting information, or if the senior dev is good at explaining what they're doing while they're doing it. Paired programming is can be really, really beneficial. So that's awesome. That's actually something I'm thinking about now that we're really deep into the actually kind of past time on the live stream. One of the things I'm thinking about adding, and this might be some, we talked a while back about monetization and all that stuff. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but the channel got monetized, so you might be seeing more ads on videos than you used to. I don't know. I've made like $13 too, so it's awesome. Anyway, so I know we talked about what things might be good from like a membership standpoint. And one of the things that I've thought about recently was doing like a weekly or bi-weekly live stream of more of like a paired programming thing where I build something that I want to build for me, or as a real project, for something that I would sell. But I'm just going through it and hanging out with you guys and talking through what I'm doing. I don't know if people would even want to watch that. That's why I put that other poll up recently. I was like, how many people really would watch somebody code? But hopefully we'd have some interactions too, so it wouldn't just be sitting here watching me code. But it wouldn't necessarily be a coding tutorial either, right? So it's kind of a weird thing. I don't know if anybody would really be interested in that. But that's something that I've thought about. Maybe that would be helpful because it has that idea of paired programming, and paired programming, it can be a really powerful tool to help in that mentoring process. So anyways, it's interesting. Ads used to be the best part of watching TV. Yikes. 10 minutes of programming, 20 minutes of ads. You're not seeing any ads? Well, count yourself lucky. I'm not a fan of the ads. Anyway, yeah, that's true, Ian. Paired programming can go either way. I think you have to use it right. You have to use it wisely, right? It can't just be the senior dev doing all the work. If he or she is writing, they need to be explaining what they're doing and why they're doing it, and be open to being corrected and finding new ways, right? But I think there's a trade-off too. Sometimes you have to watch and ask questions as a senior dev and let the junior dev write the code and figure some things out on their own. So I think there's a duality to it that if you do it well, it can really work both ways from a paired programming standpoint. So thanks, Ian. You watched that ad. Yeah, perfect. That's awesome. I'd love to watch you code. You must know things I don't. Watching you apply your knowledge, that would be awesome. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. A lot of it comes down to time availability too, so we'll see. Ming says that's why I prefer the mentee doing most of the coding. Then I ask questions and explain things. Yeah, I think to me there's like a transition point, right, where you start writing code as the mentor, um, and it switches over time, right, to where they're writing the code. Because at the end of the day, the goal of mentorship is for the mentee to become independent, right? The goal is for them to take over and get to where they're not asking you questions anymore, very rarely, right? That independence is the goal of mentoring. And so, yeah, I mean, at some point, you definitely want that transition to take place where they're writing all the code and thinking through it, and maybe you're even letting them make mistakes and then pointing out the issues, walking through, and maybe they're doing the work before they get to you where they can't figure out an error, and then you walk them through fixing the error. So it's a process, right? For sure. I don't think there's like, you have to do it this way the whole time. Um, but I think the paired programming makes it it makes it easier in many ways to visualize what the discussion is about. I think that's the thing that helps the most. Um, Mel says the mentee becomes the mentor, becomes the mentee. Yes, it's the circle of development, the circle of mentoring, the circle of life. The develop the well, and honestly, like I would call myself a mentee to other people in other things. You go through life and circumstances and challenges come up, and you have to learn from other people too. So it may not be code related. Sorry, guys. Maybe I should have more coffee. It may not be code related necessarily, but it's there's always going to be something that we can learn from other people. And that's why, I really appreciate the way that you guys interact with each other in the Discord channel, because even if you may not know, you may not think of yourself as knowing more than other people, there's things that you know that other people don't. There's things you've experienced that other people haven't. So sharing those experiences and that knowledge is mentoring, to some degree, even if it's limited mentoring. So the police. Nice. All right. Well, we have gone over our 2 hours, so I probably should sign off here. I agree, Mel, and I hopefully will be able to be in there a little bit more frequently. I actually realized halfway through the week this week that I didn't even have it open on my computer, or have the Discord channel open on my computer. So sorry, I missed a lot of chat, but I'm being honest with you. There's some things you guys have been chatting about, and I'm like, I can't touch that one. So, excuse me. So you guys definitely know a lot of stuff, and you share a lot of stuff, and I appreciate it. I think it's definitely well on its way to where to what I had envisioned and hoped for it to be. We just need to get more people in there. We just need to get more people in there and participating and helping us. I think we've got like over 200 people signed up. Not everybody is in there very frequently asking questions or answering questions or things like that. So yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean now you're independent, and it's just fine tuning. I love that concept, right? It's just tweaking a little bit. It's kind of like a violin. A violin has the big knobs at the end for your major changes in your pitch, right? But then it has these little fine tuners down here near the chin that you can just turn just a little bit, and it gets even more fine tuning. That's the goal. Yeah, get independence to where you can handle the big stuff. You just need somebody to come in and help tweak your process, or help tweak the way that you're thinking about something, or help remind you to go check out this documentation, or whatever that looks like, right? So that's the goal. The goal is not to have a mentor for years and years and years. The goal is to have a mentor who can help you reach the point where you are an independent developer. And again, that's going to be different for everybody. That's going to be a year for one person, and 6 months for another person, and 2 years for another person, just based on lots of variables, like the time that you have available to do it, the time they have available from a mentoring standpoint, your ability to learn. Some people learn faster than others. doesn't make them better. It's just different, right? So there's going to be lots of factors in how long that mentoring program takes. But at the end of the day, the goal is for it to be short term, not long term. So anyway, all right, I'm going to say goodbye, guys. Thank you for hanging out with me and talking, listening to me yammer on for the last 45 minutes about things. Hopefully some of it was beneficial and informational for you in some way. And as always, certainly feel free to jump on the Discord server and help each other out. Feel free to jump into these live streams. We will be here next week, as far as I know. That's the plan. And we'll be looking at the code repository. We'll be looking at that structure. And then the week after that, diving into some more code-specific things and talking about our first tickets, which will probably be migrations. And yeah, so we are right there. We're right on the cusp of actually jumping in and building this project. So looking forward to it. Maybe now that we're actually getting close to the code part, we'll get some more people on the live stream since we're actually talking about the project itself and the code rather than all these other things that most people don't want to talk about or care about. So we'll see. Maybe we'll pick up some live stream viewers as we start looking at code. So have a great afternoon. Oh, afternoon to me. Have a great weekend, guys. I know for those of us in the United States, it's a holiday weekend with Memorial Day on Monday. So if you're here in the United States, have an enjoyable weekend if you've got that off, extended weekend. And I will see you guys probably next Saturday. I will have at least one video up this week, if not more. Again, I want to try to get that picked back up a little bit now that some things are starting to calm down from a job standpoint and graduation, all that stuff. So hopefully we'll get some more stuff out there for you guys that'll be helpful. And not just clickbait. Probably some clickbait, but not just clickbait. All right. I'll see you guys. Have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you later.